Hello and welcome to Bright Wings, children's books to make the heart soar. My name is Charity Hale. Today we're going to be talking about board books. I know, for the most part, our goal with board books is that they not be eaten, either by the child or the dog. If you're not in the stage of board books, they can sometimes become kind of this distant memory. But I want to focus on this podcast today about talking about beautiful board books. What are the best board books to help my child flourish? Board books are our first opportunity to meditate with our child on these themes of who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? What must I do? Reading those board books, or nowadays they have these amazing newfangled books called indestructible books, I guess. My sister-in-law pointed out this new discovery to me. Our earliest books, we want them to be books that are affirming, books that we can meditate on with our children, because by golly, we're going to be reading them a lot. We want them to be joyful and beautiful, simple, essential, tactile, books that affirm the child's embodiment, and books that help them unpack the vital importance of relationship. For a 12-month-old, relationship is their world. Relationship is the key to their identity, the key that opens up the rest of the world. The earliest board books are often all about nomenclature, the naming of things. This is my mother. This is a hug. This is my dinner. This is my dog. In fact, Maria Montessori observed that human development is not constant in progress or linear in development. Rather, she proposed that children have sensitive periods. This term, sensitive periods, is really interesting. During a sensitive period, a child absorbs and learns in order to master what they need, to develop toward finality, to develop toward maturity. In a sensitive period is characterized by intense concentration, repetition, passion, and focus. During a sensitive period, a child has a strong sensitivity to a dimension of knowledge or a set of skills. And a sensitive period lasts for a certain period of time and does not reoccur. I'm getting my information from a Montessori-based education program called Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, as well as a website called dailymontessori.com. So I like sharing with you about these things this term called sensitive periods, because it kind of helps you to identify what is going on with your child from 0 to age 6 and beyond, but especially in this crucial period where you're reading aloud so much to your child. Maria Montessori called the time from birth to age 3 the absorbent mind. And you can see this. And they're just taking in everything, intense absorption, accepting and affirming. Everything about the world is wonderful, or should be, during this time. There's a sensitive period for order between 18 months to 24 months. There's a sensitive period for language from birth to 6 years old. The sensitive period for movement and motor control is from 0 to 4 years old. The refinement of the senses occurs from 0 to 5 years old. And this is kind of, this refinement of the senses is a fascination with taste and smell, sounds, weight, texture, and touch. They're refining their sense discrimination. So they're very interested in tiny objects and details. You'll see your child pick up itty bitty bits of who knows what off the carpet, or they'll put sticks in their mouth or try grass. Also, you'll see them explore and classify. So sometimes you'll see boys who know the very complicated names of dinosaurs when they're 4 years old. They want that kind of hard work, and they're apt for it at that time. There's a sensitive period for numbers, she says, between ages 4 and 5.5. Boy, that seems like a small window. And then there's a sensitive period for manners and courtesy. Don't want to miss that one, I guess. It's between the ages of 2 and 6. We're going to have to work on that still in our house. Knowing about sensitive periods helps you to understand what you're seeing when you're observing your child, how to begin with what is first for the child. I confess I was not very familiar with this. I wish I'd known sooner about these sensitive periods, so I could have tailored what I was doing more to where my child were at. I want to give you an idea of how the concept of following the child or beginning with what is first for the child can be lived out in a concrete family. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you a conversation that I had with my friend Jaclyn Ruli, who is a Montessori educator and a homeschooling mother. I've always admired the way Jaclyn mothers. She's a woman I wish I could have in my village, living next door, so I could not just observe how she goes about mothering, but to share life with her. You'll see that Jaclyn's wise and intelligent, energetic, and vivacious. She always makes me feel at ease because she is such a beautiful extrovert. I don't feel like such a lonely extrovert out there. Not only is Jaclyn joining us today, but in fact, she just gave birth to her 6th baby 2 days ago. So crazy and so generous of Jaclyn to let me interview her. And this was our conversation.
Jaclyn, thank you for coming to Bright Wings.
I did.
Tell everybody how big your baby is.
I had a 10-pound, 2-ounce baby, and the baby was 22 and a half inches long. I'm 5 foot tall.
That's a really big baby. It's a whopper. It's a whopper. You are a whopper.
I love that. I'm going to call him Whopper. When you said Whopper, I was like, oh, he's a Whopper.
Tell me a little bit about how did you become introduced to Maria Montessori?
I think she found me. I was a young mom. I had just had my first baby, John Thomas, and I found myself constantly on the floor and doing things with him that I didn't think a master degreed person would be doing. I thought I would be the kind of mom that would be kind of controlling the environment. And I just found myself constantly watching him and being drawn to the things that he was doing. And it was like balm for my soul. I found myself playing with him and doing the things, instead of leading him, in other words, I was letting him lead me. And I didn't know even what Montessori was. And I don't know who it was, but somebody told me, you have a Montessori spirit. And I'm like, what is a Montessori spirit? So she gave me some books to look at, and I was hooked, like right away. I'm not a good reader, so I don't like to spend time reading too many words. But what I did read from her, I found what I was doing at home with my son. And I also found that because of what I was doing with my son, was giving him peace, I was hooked. I just thought, this is amazing to see a 6-month-old being able to be quiet with playing with pennies in a piggy bank and just like working. So I was hooked.
Jaclyn, in fact, I remember you were one of the first people who ever put me on to baby signs, so using sign language with your infant. And it was fascinating. It was so bodily. It was so wonderful to know that their thinking, their understanding you is far greater than their ability to speak, right? And so they can manipulate their hands and they can talk to you about what they're thinking about. And they're all there.
Yeah, that was really beautiful.
Their mind is all there. And you actually, I remember now, you were probably, not sure how you're much older John Thomas is than my daughter, but you're in that spot a little ahead of us. So Montessori has a principle, right? I think she who proposes to begin with what is first for the child. And when we're thinking about what to read to our children, and there are really differences in board books, right? Not all board books are created equal, let's just say. And this principle, begin with what is first for the child, it was really set the tone in terms of what did we begin with when we started reading, when we first sat down on the couch, when they're 12 months old. So what does that mean in your family, to begin with what's first for the child?
I really love thinking about that. And the word that comes to mind is accompaniment. Montessori is really big into observation, into and not observation in the sense of extrinsic outward looking, but more of this following and this flowing with. So when you're observing a child, you're really trying to see what it is that is sparking the spirit in the child and an awakening. And I think the moment that you feel your own self awaken with the child, especially a young one who, like you said, you can't really communicate, you don't think you can have a relationship with, but then somehow these spirits just communicate together, that is unity. There's like this knitting together that happens to the souls of those who observe children who really are observing well. And then there's this bonding that happens. So I had that moment with my son. I had board books that were given to my baby shower, and I remember sitting down and being like, and I'm almost like your mother-in-law. I did not grow up with literature in my home. I grew up with TV and television and movies. So to sit down with my baby and open a book, it was him who taught me by moving his hands. I remember him taking the page and modeling me. So that's an observation that I saw right away of like, oh, he knows what to do. And so that knowledge was there, and I just followed it. I just sat there and read Eric Carle, Hungry Caterpillar, like 20 times before he was a year old. And it was just so neat to see him just kind of model the movement. And then when he started to grab the books and to sit with me, it was just so invigorating. It was exciting that we had something that bonded us like knitting. Like we were crocheted together. So yeah, the rocking chair and the board books were the first entrance for me into children's literature. And I had no preconceived ideas because I didn't grow up with literature in my home. I'm not a literature major. I was a marketing background. I had nothing of the knowledge before that. So to follow the child to do what is most essential, Montessori is really about observing. And observing really means to accompany. And accompany means to be a co-listener, to be a co-observer, to share with the same eyes and the same soul. And when you hit that moment of unity, it's magical.
Yeah. In preparation for this, I am not a Montessori expert at all. I have a few of her books around here, and I opened one and I found this quote, and it sounds like what you're talking about. She says, "Children have a different personality from ours, and spiritual impulses are alive in them, which may be atrophied in the grown man." And I can kind of see how I see also in my first child. I think it makes you human again in a new way. That you begin to wake up and to see the world the way your child does, how truly wonderful it is. It awakens you to wonder, like you said. And as you look and wonder together at the world, it knits you together, it bonds you together, it binds you. These spiritual impulses which are alive in children, which may be atrophied in the grown man, and yet they can be reinvigorated, right? And strengthened, can make you more alive because you have something to learn from your child.
That is so beautiful to think about with her because it awakens the adult into becoming like a child. And the child is, when you look at a child, we usually distance ourselves from children in a sense as adults because we think they don't know, they don't have the views that we do, that their needs are so needy, and that we have to lower everything down to them. But really, it's us who are awakened if we get to that point of letting the child in, and then we realize it's them serving us. So this servitude of the child, Maria really talks about too. In one of her early books called The Child in the Church, she talks about the child as this silent disciple. And that is, I think, what I really experienced in my first 2 years of motherhood is my son calling me without even knowing who he was into this realm of needs that I didn't know that I needed, and healing and playfulness. I didn't know I needed to play. And the playfulness wasn't silly play, but it was a wonderful play. Like you said, it awakens wonderment. And so then it drew me into literature. I found myself just so open to receiving many wonderful things because of that accompaniment with my son.
Jaclyn, one of my questions it was for you is that if we are going to begin with what is first for the child, one of the very first thing, I mean, well, we know, okay, we also know from other studies, right, that children are experiencing and learning and growing in the womb, right? But the being born is one of the first things a child experiences. I guess I would propose that being born, what's the meaning of being born and how does it lie at the heart of personal identity?
That's really beautiful.
How does that shape what the child needs, what the child's looking for?
Yeah, Montessori says the child has this quiet call, help me to find it myself, help me to do it myself. So the child has these needs. So it's us who wonder and watch and serve the child to find their needs. So to be born is a coming and a knowledge of self that's already there. She speaks about there's this knowledge, this self teacher already in the child. And that's why if you're interested in Montessori, looking at the Montessori sensitive periods, the child goes through these periods of development that are the same across the board, no matter what country, what year the child is born in. It's really beautiful to see that the child has this inner teacher.
Right.
And so then our job as parents and as caregivers is to observe when the child is going in and out of these sensitive periods. And that helps us to work with them, and it helps them to enter into these sensitive periods so that they can.
So you're helping them engage in these things that they need to go deeply into in order to fulfill and grow and be complete.
Yeah, and so then I remember learning about the sensitive periods once my son was, I think he was 5, and being like, oh my gosh, I missed these moments. And my Montessori formation leader, she was like, no, they don't need you. Accompanied him in a different way. However, the inner teacher has already worked these in that they will happen without you even knowing. So yeah, if you know about these sensitive periods, then it's really helpful for you to ebb and flow with the child and to adapt your surrounding to be able to meet their needs. But they have already adapted too. That's why children are pouring cereal after they're done eating into their sibling's bowl or into your bowl, because they have this need of using their hands in a way that to make it a tool, to make it into work.
So what kind of books do you read then? What kind of books were important to you? Well, you have a new child to read books to coming along.
Well, that's really fun because the other day I had to tell the older children, don't take so many books to the baby because the baby was only a day old, and all of the children grabbed all of the books in the house. Let's read to the baby. And so I worked myself out of a job, kind of. I like to read board books that have nature, like natural pictures. I also like classic books. I remember in Virginia, because like I said, I'm more like your mother-in-law than your mom. I didn't grow up with books, and so I took 5 books that I really liked, and I sat down with the librarian and I said, this is what I like. This is beautiful. This is true. This is good. How do I find more of these? And so she was like, oh, you're like Barbara McClintock. You are Lois Linsky. And she was like naming all of these. And I'm like, okay, I need to write this down.
I remember, now that you say Lois Linsky, I do remember that you liked some Lois Linsky even, oh my gosh, long ago. That author rings a bell. That's great.
I like simple, essential, which is very Montessori too. It's going to what's the most essential, what's the simple. essence of what we are. So when I look at books for the babies, I like the black and white fun ones, but that's really kind of like a modern psychology thing. I find that babies are more drawn to classical images, sweet images, and things that they can identify. Kenneth Lilly is an author that I like that has beautiful paintings, and I love Lois Linsky because of the just very essential what is necessary. The words are easy for them to pick up, and then they can start to speak in dialogue with you when they look at a pig, they say oink.
What are children interested in? You're talking about these sensitive periods.
They,
Language, eh?
There's a fancy word in the Montessori world called nomenclature, which pretty much just means vocabulary. What I've learned in the Montessori nomenclature world is it's not just like cat, dog. Children want real words. So if the real word is hippopotamus, give them hippopotamus, not hippo. They want the complicated words because that's work for them. It's satisfying for them to say something that's so challenging
difficult
and hard. Yes. So like my sons, I did not bring Thomas the Tank Engine into our house. Instead, I read Eric Carle's Freight Train, where it said hopper car and steam engine, and I'm forgetting all the names of the cars now, but
I remember he went through a train phase, like so many boys I've discovered since John Thomas go through train phases. And he wanted to name all. I remember being out at a museum with you guys, and he wanted to name all the parts of the train, different cars, different axle
and cowcatcher and
yes,
all of these pieces that whenever he actually went to a train museum, I was in love with the older men because they would say, he knows the real words. He's not just saying Thomas and Henry and whoever that's nomenclature. That is letting the child come into a world, because the child is also very interested in environment. So it's very much like you were saying, we're born into a relationship, but we're also born into an environment. And the child wants to know, where am I? And so it starts small. In the Montessori world, she shows, it starts small, but then it opens up. And so he wants to know, what is this place that I'm in? And so if we give them the real names and the real vocabulary, then they start to live in that place of reality. It's a way of anchoring them into reality that's really beautiful. And so if they are anchored into reality, then guess what? They can communicate to us in a way that's real and that has power for them. So for him to tell an old man that I know that that's a cow catcher, boom, he's in relationship. His being is now giving of self, and he can receive the other person, and they are communicating and having a great time, and they're not talking twaddle. That's a Charlotte Mason term for reading. When you get twaddle, like a rabbit is talking to a cat. That's not real, and that's fun and imaginative, but it doesn't anchor you into reality. And so it does involve the imagination, but it doesn't involve a relationship per se.
And right, there's a greater exchange of persons when you're talking about allowing your child the risk of learning the complicated words, the real names for things. It's beautiful that you're talking about the way the child wants to be allowed in and into the world, and they want to find their place. They want to discover, what is this place I've been born into. We love this story about Sophia, our oldest. When she was little, one of her first words was this. This, Mama, this. She's pointing around the room, Mama, this. She wanted to know the names of everything.
Yes, and it's such a great gift for an adult to be able to give them this. This is, and then naming it as it. That gift of being able to name something and to know its name really shows a sense of ownership and a sense of relationship that goes to the heart of the golden rule, to love your neighbor as yourself and to do unto others as you want to be done to you. Like to really give them this world and to trust that they can take it. That is a very Montessori thing too, that we trust the child and we give them, and if they can't take it, guess what? They aren't going to be interested in it. But if they can, we're giving them we're looking at their dignity and we're just giving them as much as they can. And if it doesn't have any place in them at that sensitive period, it's going to go away. But if it does, it will anchor and it will stay and it will stick for a very long time.
So do you have any, maybe putting you on the spot a bit, what are some of your favorite early books for your children?
Well,
we're going to have a podcast on rhyming books, but it's okay if some of them are rhyming books. We're going to have a whole podcast just on that.
When I have boys, I really love the Lois Linsky books, but I've learned that the girls like them. Lately, the books that I've liked for board books, I do like some of the newer authors, like the Flora series. It's a really beautiful, simple illustrator that's from Pixar. She has a really beautiful, I think, a way of looking at the body. You know, you mentioned the body earlier, and body is really good for children to see it move. And I think that this illustrator has a really good understanding. She must be a ballerina because the way that her characters in her books move and interact are so beautiful. And the integrity of the body is so well presented. And I like how she also uses nature. She uses baby chicks and she uses flamingos and things that the children are drawn to. But she also does a really nice job of integrating play and wonderment. And how does an animal who stands on one foot, how can a person do that? Like, there's no words in these books. It's just pictures. They are beautiful. My other children, once they get to like a year old, they also start to like this series of books that we have called, I'm not really sure the name of the series, but it's Gauzy and Gertie and Friends. And it's by Oliver Dunray. It's very simple, very human-ish, but there's not a lot of words. And so you're just watching these animals. And to see a 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old laugh in your lap, I mean, that to me tells me that the book is genuine.
It's a treasure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've kind of tossed out, I kind of have gone through this ebb and flow. When I just had 2, I had only one bookshelf, and then I had several books, chasing the books, and then I pared down. I started to say, okay, there's too many things for them to pick from, and they're really just going to these few. So observing the child and lowering my pride of, I spent all this money on these fancy books. So the ones I've kept are like the Oliver Dunray books, the Flora books, Eric Carle, of course, and my Lois Linsky books were not board books in the beginning, but they have board books now, which is great. Those are abridged. They're missing some of my favorite words sometimes, but one of the Lois Linsky books says that Cowboy Small brushes and curries the pony. That's a big word, like to curry a pony. What does that mean? We have a sister-in-law who takes care of horses. So for them to know that that's curry, but they took it out of the board book.
Oh, so, they want to know that word, curry. It's not food either. It's a verb.
Yeah, it's a verb. Yeah.
So, Jaclyn, one of the other things I think first for the child is they first explore their own body, like they suck on their fingers and then they suck on their toes and they realize their toes when they bite them are them. And then, they explore family relationships, right? And there are all these books that are beautiful of the child with naming the people in their family and the mother and father relationships. And in widening circles, they begin to explore the world. When that circle is wide enough to start naming things outside, how do you help your children get to know their own backyard better?
That's a really fun question because I didn't have a backyard when I first was a mom. I had a balcony and I was in a 21-story apartment and we didn't get to go outside much, but I found ways to get outside, and they were licking their toes, and then they were licking leaves and sticks, and and they were tasting anything that was on the floor.
It's so funny that children want the world to come inside them, right? In a very obvious way. They want the world and they want it in them, right? They want to eat the world.
They're so happy. They're so happy outside. Yeah, so I went outside a lot, and in my apartment, they would bring the nature in. We would come in from the park and have sticks and rocks in my pants because, we always had stuff like that. But I think to answer your question, there's a couple things that I feel have stayed in my 12 years of parenting and I will never let go of. Being outside and doing things outside is really important. But also, I think tying that into something that is meaningful is composting. Why do we go outside? We go outside because we show that we are dependent on land and that land is a gift to us. We go outside because we want them to see that the gift of us is also involved in the gift of the environment. I remember when John Thomas learned that the tree gives oxygen and that we give carbon dioxide and that there is this gift going back and forth. He literally walked up to the plant and breathed on it and sucked in and motioned this movement of self. And
this relationship with the
relationship. Yeah.
Wow.
And Montessori has a really beautiful lesson on that gift. If we have time, I'll share it with you because I use it almost daily. But because of that moment, I realized that it's really important for them to see this gift continuing in the cycle of gifts. So nothing is wasted in the natural order. Nothing is wasted. We as adults impede that process of them seeing when we stop the gift process. I have a place for compost, I have a place for recycle, and I have a place for trash. A great question to ask them when they finish with a snack or finish with an art project or something to say, how can you make this a gift again? Where can it be its greatest use? That's the Montessori question when we do the lesson. Where can this be a greater gift? Or how can the gift continue on? So for them to say...
Those are powerful questions.
It's a powerful question. But for them to constantly say, compost, 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 for them to see that the gift is greatest in the compost. It's not even greatest in the recycling, which we think as modern people that recycling would be the greatest gift. And then for them to use that compost, for us to show them how that's used outside in nature, and then to talk about how is compost made. So then you get into books with worms, and one of my favorite books right now is this book about flies. And this
what's it called?
I have to go look and see what it's called. But
okay, book about flies.
It's so.
I'm gonna write it down.
Because this fly is like, y'all are always interested in butterflies and the metamorphosis of butterflies, but guess what? I keep this world clean. Take them outside as a purpose, not just to play, but to see that there's gifts happening everywhere. Okay, now let's go beyond the compost bin. Is composting happening in the leaf pile that we just raked? Is composting happening right now as the leaves are falling? Who is cooperating with this nature that's happening? Is it the doodle bugs? I'm not kidding, Charity. This morning, Gianna found a doodle bug in our little schoolroom, and she said, our friend. And then she took it to a house plant and set it in the house plant and not outside because she knows that he's going to work there. It's like a doodle bug. And then she was interested in unrolling the doodle bug. But what's the point? The point
is the doodle bug a sow bug? A pill bug?
Yeah, a little pill bug.
Okay.
He got his better house.
Another name. Okay, sorry. You were going to make your point. Forgive me. Go ahead.
But the point is we go outside because of the same thing that you started talking about in the beginning, of relationship, of being born, of our environment, of knowing who are we working with. And so that's the Montessori lesson. Basically, the Montessori lesson was she was with her son and she's cooking at the table, or she's cooking in the kitchen, and she asks herself and her son, who do you think the first person was that thought, let me take this husk of wheat and make bread? How long did it take for them to perfect this? How many invisible bridges are involved in what I'm doing today, thousands, hundreds of years ago, and not even being able to thank them for this? And then she also does that with food. Can a human eat a beetle? No. Okay. Can a chicken eat a beetle? Yes. What does the chicken do with that beetle that helps me live? The chicken can change that beetle into a beautiful golden egg. And then I crack that egg and I can do what with it? I can use it for cake. I can use it for bread. I can use it for a quiche.
Yeah.
All by the beetle or, the whatever the chicken's eating outside. Like we have chickens outside. So it's like scorpions. Before we eat our breakfast, a scorpion's in here. Can you eat a scorpion, Michael? No.
Sweet.
It's really good egg. Yes. You want some salt on it? Yes. A salt is a rock. Can you eat a rock when it's really big? No. But your body needs salt, and it's been brought down into this. Who can we thank for breaking this salt down? Seeing all these relationships coming together, all of this nomenclature and vocabulary and these invisible bridges is very Montessori.
Yes. Well, I've heard it said before, but I just want to repeat how wonderful it would be to be a child in your house, Jaclyn.
Oh, praise God. It is crazy in our house.
I'm just so grateful for this conversation, Jaclyn. It takes shape differently. Is there anything that you were thinking that you wanted to say that hasn't come up yet?
Well, when you asked to talk about literature and books, I thought I am not the right person to talk about literature and books because I didn't know anything before. And then after I was thinking about this in the past 24 hours, I just thought it was the child who showed me. It was being open to what happened to me in becoming a mother and what that really means to be in relationship with the child and to not be afraid of the child and to really
of what they need, like not to be afraid of what they need, not to be afraid to be determined by them.
And also not to be afraid of yourself, because I do think that there was a moment of inadequacy. Sometimes I think as moms, we look at other moms and we go, oh, even watching Charity and Connor, they have so much literature knowledge and artistic ability. And, we look at other parents and we don't look at the need that we have, that our children are giving us. I'm so grateful for that moment of humility, asking that librarian, knowing that there was something there in my son and me and that I didn't know how to fulfill. And just to say, okay, give me 20 minutes, walk me through, and then just letting it all open up from there. This is before blogs.
Yes.
This is like in Yahoo group days. Yeah.
Right.
I'm so grateful for that moment of humility of saying, there's a void in me that's being fulfilled, that's balm for my soul, and I am hungry for it. And to sit on the floor and to just follow him, that was it was just a beautiful thing. And it's opened me up to this world of learning so much from my children and letting them teach me. I just am so grateful for that. And I just hope every mother and father can find a space in their heart that is open to letting their children lead them. And who knows where it'll be? It might be a train museum. It could be, somewhere else. Yeah, I really want to say this too real quick. Reading has slowed all of us down. There's 8 of us now in this family, but this is a testament to the culture that we live in. But it's such a fast-paced world, but because we are a reading family, we find ourselves slowing down. And every year when we get a 7-year-old, we always find ourselves reading Narnia. And we're in those Narnia books. And before we know it, the whole couch is full. And we have stopped what we're doing and we've slowed ourselves down. And that is a type of knitting a family together that I don't think can be replaced in any other media. It's really neat to see how reading and books can take you to places that you cannot imagine. A 40-year-old, 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old sitting on the couch together, coming to one place.
And doing anything else together but reading. What else could bridge all those different abilities?
Yeah, right? I love what C.S. Lewis says about a good book. You know, a good book should be enjoyed by the child and the adult. So, you know,
right.
That's how you know you have a good book. If your kiddo and you are there together over and over, enjoying it several times, that's a good book.
Right, right. I think children's literature is really literature because in order for you to write a good children's book, it has to be kind of poetic. You have to take great themes, great ideas, deep ideas, and you have to kind of condense them into a way that is poetic, right? And that's why you can read a good children's book many times.
Mm-hmm.
Because it should be poetic. It should be deep. You should be able to meditate on it in a certain sense, right? Which is what you're doing when you're reading, you know, a children's book for the 20th time.
Yeah.
Or the 50th.
I get frustrated when I get modern children's books that are less than 1,000 words, and you're just, you're this isn't quite fair, you know. But these longer books, mothers and fathers should not be afraid of these long books, these fairy tales, older books, because the children they'll sit and listen to them, and so will you. You will want to sit. Find out what happens at the end. My husband is getting really into children's literature because he's written a couple and he's sent them off to publishers, and so we're kind of like learning this new.
Wow.
It's fun, but the publishers are saying no more than 1,100 words, and he's like,
wow,
that's not a good book. Because our children have showed us that it's the longer and character development and things that are happening. And I understand, attention span too. The attention span of a child. If with Montessori were to talk about literature, she would really show that the child does have the capability for concentration. If a child can concentrate, a child can contemplate. And that's kind of what her method shows. And she really, I think, would kind of balk at some of the literature that we have today for not giving the child a chance to enter into these beautiful stories.
I want to read this quote to you. It's a continuation of the quote I read at the beginning. So let me just read the quote from the beginning. Children have a different personality from ours, and spiritual impulses are alive in them, which may be atrophied in the grown man. So we hope that our children will keep us alive and keep us strong in those things that animate them, because they see sometimes more deeply and with greater wonder than we do. We must always keep this fact in mind, so that we may be prepared not only to offer children the noblest teaching, but to offer it in a worthy form. Finding great books for our children so they can enter more deeply into the world, that the books they read reinforce the goodness of the world.
Right, absolutely. So beautifully. I love reading Montessori.
Jaclyn, thank you.
Thank you so much, Charity.
Thank you for listening to Bright Wings, children's books to make the heart soar. If you'd like to continue the conversation at brightwingschildrensbooks.com, you'll find a list of Jaclyn's favorite board books, which she described in her interview. And if you're interested in the sensitive periods we talked about, and you want to learn more, there's also going to be a link there. It's great to realize that there's a co-naturality between your child and their development and the world in which they're developing. On brightwingschildrensbooks.com, you'll also find a reflection by me about birth and the value of vulnerability and the joy of reading board books. Thank you for joining us.